number one offender of relapse being resentment, which is what you go to, 100% it is. So I talked to Ryan last night about this too, and I said, hey man, like, as we were talking, I said, I'm picking up a lot of resentment right now, and this is not good. And because what I'll do, I'll start pushing people away and start building cases, and like that's the easier thing. Like,
so it's Jason Macmillan. He's today's guest. And he's been on the show a few times before. He's always got some really insightful things to say. This time we kind of talked about some of the challenges about being in recovery. And of course, he's in long-term recovery now. And some of the challenges that just never go away. So it's a really great episode, especially for anybody that's in long-term recovery and looking for some insight, I guess. Hey, if you like our content, if you could just do me a quick favor and go ahead, like, comment, share, smash the subscribe button, do all the things that you need to do. It really does help us to continue to spread the message. As a matter of fact, there's nothing you can do that's more helpful. So I really appreciate every single interaction. Today's title sponsor is FAR Canada. That's Families for Addiction Recovery. They are a non-profit organization in Canada, and their focus is on the families of people who suffer in addiction. And just like us, they believe that that's the best way to help people that are in addiction, is to help the people around them. They offer group meetings for people who are in similar situations. They also offer a helpline that's available kind of during business hours. You have to check out the website for those hours. And as well, of course, they have their peer-to-peer support system, which is absolutely amazing. In the background, Angie Hamilton, the executive director, works tirelessly advocating for changes that they would like to see on a systematic level. And I couldn't appreciate her more for doing those things. Hey, hope you enjoy the episode, guys. Thanks for watching. Hello, everybody. Watchers, listeners, supporters of all kinds. Welcome to another episode of the Ash is Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chuck LaFlange, checking in from Krabi, Thailand, halfway around the world, somewhere in the greater Vancouver area, is my good friend and guest for today, Jason Macmillan. How are you doing today, Jason?
I'm not bad, Chuck. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
What part of the world are you in out there again? It's not Surrey, right?
No, it's not Surrey. It's actually
Mission. Okay. Oh, you're in Mission. Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Ryan Bathgate territory. Yeah. Okay. Right. To me, it's all Vancouver, right? Still, right? Even after being there a dozen times, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, yeah. Listen, we talked for quite a bit pre-record, as we tend to do. There's a bunch of things that we can get into. And for anybody that's not familiar, Jason's been on the show 4 times now? 4 times? 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, I think 3. Yeah.
3 2 weekend rambles, and if you want to go back, you just search Jason on our website at a2apodcast.com, and you can listen to and watch a couple of those. So we're not going to get into your story. We've already told that. There's so much to be told in the recovery world. One of the things that I want to touch on, we started to talk about when I hit the record button, Jason, is how we treat ourselves, and specifically asking for help, right? And how hard that can be for all sorts of different reasons and nuances in different situations. Mm-hmm. If you want, like, if you want to jump right into that, where you're at right now, and you kind of use that as a bounce off, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's it's funny because we were, I think with Chuck, we were talking the other day, and even on the, the episode that, Ryan just did, and how important it is to not only ask for help, but to take those suggestions that people say, so I can ask for help, but it's just like, if I'm not going to take the action, nothing's probably going to, nothing's going to change. Right. So when we talk about, like, I like to think I'm pretty, quite self-aware. I can be aware of all these things. I was aware if I smoked fentanyl, I was going to burn my life down, but didn't stop me from fucking smoking fentanyl. Right. So, today, and it's like, I'm not smoking fentanyl, but very much I'm capable of burning my life down clean and sober with 5 years. And I've actually been doing a pretty good job of that, and it I think a lot of it comes from, trauma is definitely a part of it. Codependency is a part of it. My ego definitely gets in the way sometimes because, like, so what happens is, unfortunately, when you guys talked about, I think you guys might talk about these pedestals, right? So I myself, I do that with some of the people I know in my life and some of the people that aren't here anymore. So I almost separate them, and I have this unrealistic expectation of them that they're fucking Superman and they're the go-to. They always have the solutions, always have the answers, but it's like, who do those people go to? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to remain, clean and sober, is because I have just enough just enough willingness at those times when I need help, I fucking reach out and ask for help. And just because people are clean and sober doesn't mean everything's great all the time. That's
true story.
absolutely
True story.
false. And I think, Chuck, these are the conversations we need to be having, you know, about some of the internal battles and struggles in it. And,
no kidding, right? And specific to, and just for viewer reference, we recently did an episode with one of my co-hosts, Ryan Bathgate, very good friend of both of ours, and a big part of our recovery community as well, right, for both of us, who experienced a relapse and had to admit to himself that ego is the thing that got in the way, which, I mean, was quite obvious, I think, well, especially after the fact, right, with the benefit of hindsight, but how hard that is for ask for help, and he put himself up on a pedestal. We put everybody up, and there's people in your life who put you on this pedestal.
Yeah.
Right. Without a shadow of a doubt. Your sponsees, your, other people in your world, right, who think that you're indestructible. So when it comes time for you to say, hey, I need help with, right, and how hard that is. For myself, bro, I'll tell you something. I was really thinking about this the other day. I tried to make it real and I couldn't of it. It's just something you have to have a conversation about. But the kind of help that, I need these days specifically is a little different, and that ebbs and flows, of course, like anything else in life. But so I know my mom is not like, she will help me financially when I need it. Like to the point where I can almost take that for granted. If I'm making good choices and I'm doing, like, you know what I mean? I'm living responsibly, I'm living a simple life, and I need help, I know she's going to, if she is able to. I know that for a fact. The process, and here's where the relatability part comes into. The process for me to ask for help, to go from the point where I decide I need the help and I'm gonna ask her, to actually asking, is days. It involves unsent messages. It involves an emotional roller coaster, and these are the things that I'm sure you can relate to, right? Like I need, you know what I mean? Like I need to ask somebody for mental health help. I need to ask a sponsor for whatever it is, right? There's a fucking process, and why is that? Well, right? Like what does that to somebody?
It's I think for me, like, again, it's if we want to circle back to ego and pride. So when you ask, it's funny because if you ask a lot of people what was the thing that made you relapse, it was like, oh, it's like the drugs and alcohol. The relapse started fucking months before that. For me, it did, at least, right? I stopped asking for help. I stopped doing the things. I put myself up on this like pedestal, like I was the end all be all, like I knew everything because I was Jason with 1 year sober. I stopped learning, I stopped growing, and there I am picking up. So, that to me, it's scary how quick the insanity can return and the obsession can return to. I think it's a good idea to pick up substances. I don't like the way I feel about myself right now, and I know how to change that. So it's confusing, Chuck, because like we talked about too. So inside the rooms of 12-step rooms of AA, there's a lot of, unfortunately, and people best intentions, but they don't always know what the fuck they're talking about, so people will be very quick, and I was one of those people too, to weigh in when it comes to mental health, who are really unqualified and uneducated, and say, oh, if you suffer from this, just do this, you can't talk about that, and very much there's still shame, there's still stigma attached to medications, to mental health, to trauma. I had somebody tell me to do a step forward for my trauma.
Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy, right? Knowing what I know about trauma now, and of course, I have been lucky enough to experience the Yatra Trauma Center and all of the things that I got to experience there. The idea that a step anything, that doing anything outside of working on your trauma with intent in a therapeutic environment is going to do anything blows my mind. Hey, before we get too far into the episode, got to mention my special sponsor. Of course, that is the Yatra Trauma Center here in Krabi, Thailand, where I reside. They offer trauma therapy to all sorts of different kinds of trauma, big T traumas, little T traumas, all the traumas. They do it very, very, very well. Completely changed my life when I went there for their residential treatment program. So check them out, guys. You can learn more about them. And of course, see all the episodes that Mike Miller, the head clinician, has come on the Ashes to Awesome podcast for at a2apodcast.com/trauma. Back to the show. Just the concept of that is just, it's an unacceptable thing to even say to somebody, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah. And again, like, I don't know, we'll probably talk about this. I don't know if I want to, you and I were talking the other day, and I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, Brandon, and I never really heard anybody say that before. And what he said, I've by far experienced more trauma since I've been sober than I did in addiction.
No doubt. right? I shouldn't say that. No, for me, it's just different. It's not more, it's not bigger, it's not smaller. It's just different, right? Some of the things that have been said to me by family members, you know, about my past. Oh, right. Not just hurtful, but traumatic. Right. Because now your behavior is going to change. You know what I mean? And you're looking for your addict brain is always looking for something for some damn reason. You know what I mean? So now you're feeling shame, which is that's a traumatic thing too. Like it's a trauma response, right?
Yeah,
100% it is. So yeah.
You know, I think it's a matter of we need to go to the right people for the right help, and sometimes I get confused and I get overwhelmed. I'm like, what am I experiencing right now? Why is it here, and who do I go to?
So can I ask you specifically? We've talked pre-record, but can I ask you specifically what that struggle is for you right now?
Yeah. You know, for me, Chuck, it's you know, I'm at this place where I'm you know, I've been sober for 5 years, but I'm still having myself. So it's been, you know, pointed out to me in a very kind and loving and caring way that I probably suffer from some mental health that's been undiagnosed, and I never had a proper mental health assessment, you know. So I get confused, and I go always back to what they tell me inside the rooms and what I know about Alcoholics Anonymous, that if I'm feeling, you know, discomfort, or if I'm being impulsive, I need to pray more, I need to meditate more, I need to do more service work, all the things that we do. And it's just like, I've been fucking consistently doing all these things for like a while now, right? This stuff is still here, so I need to go to the right. So basically my next step is to go and get an assessment done, you know, and see if I have any disorders. And I'm pretty sure I do, that are undiagnosed, and we'll go from there, right? So that's just what I'm
see what that involves, right? So that naturally leads into the next thing to talk about, and something that I've been very vocal about lately on the social media platforms is medication and sobriety, and specifically in the rooms, right, and how that looks, right? So, and we did talk about that, and I mean, it's something that you said that you've been vocal about, so I think I'm comfortable kind of calling you out on that and to have a conversation about it, right? But for somebody with, maybe we'll stay away from Matt for now, though the conversation may get there, but specifically, let's go with ADHD. Yeah, right? Let's go with that, because it's such a common thing, and you know the correlation between ADHD and addiction is massive. We know that, right? That, you know, but it involves quite often. I mean, there is some non-stimulant options, but most often it involves a stimulant, right, which does involve amphetamines, right? Yeah. So the stigma behind needing that medication, or behind taking that medication, and even needing it in the rooms, and I'm not, you know, as you well know, I'm not a 12-stepper, but you are. So I'll let you speak to how that looks when somebody says they need it or says they're on it. How does that look in the rooms in your experience? Because every meeting is going to be different with different souls, of course. But,
it's. I would want to say there's a lot more awareness now in 2024 as there was like in 1939, whatever, when the big book was written, right? But it's very much a thing. There's very much stigma attached to certain type of oat therapies and methadone and Cadian and all that stuff. And I have some of my own beliefs when it comes to that, and those are personal. Like, to me, I need to be careful not to project that onto other people when it comes to, and then even myself too. So probably 4 years ago, if I think a lot of it for me is like fear based, right? If I take this medication, people are going to think that I'm not abstinent, or I'm doing it to med seek or like whatever, right? I'm trying to alter my mood. Like, I know for me, it comes down to, first of all, it's really not no one's, business what medication people take, and with that being said, if I had like, a sponsor or something like that, and I'm having a conversation with him, he's nodding off and his eyes are pinned, like, hey man, like, you might want to talk to your doctor.
At least be aware of everything, right? Yeah,
totally,
of course, yeah.
So when I think it's just, I think, Chuck, a lot of it is just like ignorance, right? And we need to, and again, even for me, man, like I'm scared to put a substance in me if it's going to be, something that's prescribed from a doctor, if it's for ADHD, because I really don't want to change. I don't want to alter my mood. So my mood, but at the same time, I want to have like a better life. And if this is affecting my life, which it seems like, clearly it is, I need to, take a look at that. Yeah. Right. So,
and I'll just pause you there. I don't want to alter my mood, your quote, but yeah, you do. right? Like, it's exactly the thing that you want to alter, right? Or at least your state of being to a place where you can enjoy that, right? Like,
I'll rephrase that, Chuck. I don't want to be like
intoxicated, right?
Maybe intoxicated or not. Like, I don't want to feel like all weird, like I just did, like meth or something like that, right? Like,
If that
makes
and I can tell you from personal experience, the first time I took a medication for ADHD when I was still in Canada, it was like, it wasn't euphoric. It wasn't any of those things that I experienced, during my meth days. I'll tell you what it was, though. It was relief.
Yeah.
It was not just relief. It was a break from the chaos that is an ADHD mind, right?
Yeah.
From the overthinking and the task paralysis and the amount of shit I could get done all of a sudden because I wasn't so wrapped up in this craziness that's going on inside my brain. For somebody to tell me that is a negative thing, you can just fuck right off at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
One of the most hurtful things that has ever been said to me in sobriety, I said it to a close family member, I got some medication and holy shit, I'm not a medication person.
Right.
So, I think, what do you think? Do you think if I break my leg, I should just walk it off?
Totally.
Right, because it's the same thing, right? Like it is. It's you know what I mean. But you're not experiencing what I'm experiencing, and if you were, trust me, you'd be a medication person. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Like you said right there, that's one of the biggest things is like you don't know the internal fucking battles and struggles that I have right now, right? So until you know, don't fucking talk about it, and don't tell me what you think I should do or shouldn't do.
And here's the thing: nobody's ever going to know. I don't know what you're going through. Because I'm not going through it, even though I've been through something similar, even though our journeys have some parallels, the ADHD thing, especially in sobriety, I'll never fucking know. And one of the smartest things anybody ever said to me was, I understand that I will never understand.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the first person that said that to me, I could have married her right there on the spot.
Yeah.
It's just like, where have you been my whole life? It was just the most like, oh, somebody gets it. Right?
Yeah, because you felt heard, it. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like what we talked about too. So yesterday, I reached out to somebody who I know in sobriety, who I respect her quite a bit. She's been sober a while, and somebody, a mutual friend, connected me with her, and she suffers with borderline personality disorder. I don't want to say suffers. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I'm sure she has suffered with it, with the conversation that we had. So she talked about her experience with that and having it being untreated, undiagnosed, and she kept on burning her life down completely sober, and it wasn't until she got the proper diagnosis, did the right, therapy that she was able to kind of manage it, if that makes sense. I don't know much about it, but so again, I felt when I talked to her, I felt heard. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel shamed, anything like that. And she, I was able to connect, with her, right, and said, hey, this is what I'm experiencing right now, and sometimes I think people, we talked about too, oh yeah, everything's all great and this and that. We go to meetings and people see us and we're happy and we share these powerful messages. And I think what you said too, me myself, I think sometimes I might put myself in a pedestal, if I'm being honest with you. And I feel that other people do, and there's this almost, like I said, an unreal expectation that I need to make it sound like I have it all together. But the reality is that I don't,
If I can relate to anything you will ever say, that is now, because I've got a little bit of time and hey, I'm still under 2 years, right? Yeah. But because of what I do for a living at the podcast and social media, there is this perception people have, and it's like, oh, if you only knew, right? If you only knew what happens. You see me for a minute at a time or an episode at a time, right? If you saw what happened in between.
Totally. Right? Yeah. And that's, and that's the thing, Chuck. There's actually a part in I don't want to turn this into a big book study, but there's a part in the big book where it talks about how we have this, the alcoholic addicts, or whatever you want to call it, has this stage character, right? So it's very much our persona. It's our ego. It's this illusion that this is who I want you to see, and that's the shit that keeps us loaded and keeps us sick and keeps us in guilt and shame, and we're not, I'm not connectable when I'm doing that. People can't relate to that, right? And I don't want to, and I see it too. I witnessed it firsthand, and people inside the rooms. I asked them how they're doing. Oh, I'm great, and then they give their service resume, and I was at that guy too. And look, I didn't ask you how many fucking meetings you went to last week. I asked actually how you doing. And people would ask me, and I felt the need to tell them all of these things, but inside, it's like that's not how, to be honest, like I feel like I have a big fear of being alone, I have a fear of abandonment, I feel ugly, I feel fat, I feel insecure. This is the shit that's going on with me right now, and I think this is the stuff like we need to talk about, and it's okay to like
Absolutely
not be okay, so.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. You said something when you're speaking to your friend about, things she's gone through with her BPD and maybe some of the things that you need to address. And there is nothing anybody can do to convince me that you feeling heard and you coming out of that conversation feeling just a little bit better about what your future might look like is 100 times better than anything different than that might happen inside a room where you feel judged and shamed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's, of course that's so much better. Right? So why can't we bring that into can it come into the rooms, please? Can we bring that attitude in where we're not judging people and shaming people, right?
Yeah,
no.
and that's like the whole thing, Chuck. And one of the problems is that by the time, for most people, especially women, have made it into, the rooms of AA or NA, they're so vulnerable. They're looking for a safe place. They want to be heard. They already feel the shame, the judgment, the guilt. We don't need to perpetuate that and add to that by, so there's supposed to be a safe place, and it's not always a fucking safe place, right? And I sometimes don't feel safe in there. Like I feel like when I speak on mental health, on trauma, I can feel the judgment sometimes. Some people get it and they'll nod their heads, and others it's that, like, again, like I think they're just really ignorant and they're not educating themselves enough about this. They're trying to understand, right? So it's like that's the shit that's going to keep people out of the fucking rooms,
and like we've talked about, when you take that fucking sense of community away, the one place people can find fellowship easily, when you take that away, you quite often, we know what that leads to, right? That person goes back out, and now these days it's very different than it was even 10 years ago, 10 years ago for sure. People die. And that's just the reality of it, right? It's a dangerous thing to do. And it is driven by ego. Mm-hmm. I believe.
Yeah.
When somebody shames you, it's because their recovery path, what worked for them has to work for you. But that's all ego shit, right? Yeah. And so one of the things I've come fond of saying is, if I'm judging somebody else's recovery, I need to start taking a hard look at my own. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That is the moment when I need to take a step back and really look at myself, because that's ego, right? Yeah. That's all it is. It's
Yeah. And if I'm just going to be completely transparent and honest, because like we'll do that. I find myself doing it too. I was at a meeting the other day, and this guy, he was coming back. He said, I'm coming back, and he opened up the meeting. I have my own opinion on asking somebody to open up the meeting when they're, basically blowing out crack hoots, but nonetheless, yeah, you might want to listen, right? So, but I found myself, he went on the fucking long rant for 50 minutes about the problem, but that's the chairperson's fault anyways. So I found myself judging him though. I said, hey man, do you want to shut up and let people speak that have been through that talk about the solution? So then I tried to correct myself though, man, and that was all ego. 100% was what that was, right? So I just circle back to, do you know how many times I went inside the rooms and I was high on heroin and I had no problem sharing, and now I have an opinion on this guy because he hadn't been through the 12 steps yet. He's coming back that he's not sharing the message of recovery, and right. that's the truth, right? Like,
Well, you call yourself out on it, and that's a huge, that speaks to who you are as a person, and certainly, your recovery. In my experience, and I don't know if you know this or if we've ever really talked about it, but the reason I never went back to the rooms, I don't know if I ever have told you about that, right? I relapsed. And then after my first 30 days clean ever, as an adult, never had that before. And I'm in my 40s, right? Right. So I get 30 days clean under my belt. At 34 days, I relapse. The idea of going back to zero and facing that, the shame of that, is why I never went back. Yeah, right? And that's not a problem with 12 steps. That was a problem with me,
100%,
and with benefit of hindsight. But I was a sick person, right? So And people, well, that's your own. No, yes, it's my own fault, but they're sick people. You have to adjust your behavior to the fact that sick people are around. So maybe try not to attach so much ego to that. Try not to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And that's the thing, Chuck, too, is that, like, you know, the only requirement for NA membership or AA membership is desire to stop using substances or drinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that just means that that's the only requirement to fucking be there. So anybody can go inside the rooms, right? Let's just be honest. There's some sick people that end up in the room. They do, you know.
That's why you get there. You don't show up there for the first time because you're healthy.
No, I wasn't killing it when I wasn't like, hey, like my life is going so good. I just thought I'd pop in and say, hey, you know, and it's like, yeah. And but again, I'm grateful for the people that were, you know, that were open, and that they, like, when I came in, like, hey man, like, you know, how you doing? Welcome, right? That's what we need more of, you know?
Yes.
And that's that fellowship piece that you're talking about, right? Like, and they're there, you know, you just have to find them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important. Every time I say anything that isn't wonderful about 12 steps, I feel I need to qualify it, which by saying that is some rooms, that is some people in some rooms, that is not the program.
100%.
That is, you know, and all the things that we're talking about, right? I did an episode with Mike Miller. I can't think of the number. Maybe I'll look it up here while we're talking. But he spent an entire episode defending the fundamentals of 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you got a chance to listen to that one or not, but
no,
it was amazing, man. He basically said the problem is not with the people, or the problem is not with the program. It's with the people.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
It is.
So,
you know,
and again, that's one of the things, and unfortunately, like, sometimes Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous gets a bad name because of the people, not the program. The program works. We know that. We can look at the statistics, right? So we can't really argue that. But so if I'm new and I'm going to the rooms for the first time, and my experience is somebody's laughing when I was sharing, or they were you know, they were judging me or shaming me or whatever for this medication or whatever it might be, right? Like, that's sometimes people's experience. So that will represent not the person, but Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's not necessarily true. I always try to, it was said to me that, you know, so whenever I was out there and I was like dope sick and I was like, you know, trying to, you know, seek heroin if I couldn't find it, did I just stop at one dealer if you had some shitty heroin if I couldn't find it? Like, no, like I kept going, right? So if I kind of bring that attitude into recovery, you know, find whatever works, right? Find a medium that you like, and there's tons of them, you know. But it is really unfortunate that I feel that those fundamentals have been lost. For sure.
They have in so many instances, right? By the way, that was episode 224 for anybody that's curious. If you want to go back and listen to that, Mike is one of the most. He's coming up on 5 years here in a couple of days on the 5th. It'll be on 21 years for him. That he's been sober now, right? He answered the phone when Devin called in, right? You know, So Devin McGuire, if for anybody that's not, you know, and you know what? Why don't we move into the next thing here, next topic, and that is grief. I think now that I've said the D word, you know, there's some grief there, right? So how do you not? For anybody that doesn't know, Devin McGuire was an institution unto himself in the recovery world. He's helped more people than anybody will ever know, more people than he would ever know. Just in his existence, he's just the most amazing human being. And he's recently passed. And, you know, we lost the big one there. And there's a lot of grief happening right now in your part of the world, in all parts of the world. Here in Thailand, you know, like there's even that. There's me, there's Mike, there's the interventionist. I can't think of his name. You know his name. Andy
Batty.
Andy Batty, right? These are all people that are very close to him, right? Lisa in Calgary is absolutely devastated by the loss. You know, yourself, you were very close to him. Ryan Bathgate, very close to him. And these are just the people I know, and I've only known the man for just over a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right? So, you know, the world lost a really, really good one. And how's it look for you? And I don't know how much you want to get into this, and I'll let you pull the pin when it's right for you to pull the pin, man. I can see you're getting emotional now, and I appreciate that. How does that affect you in your sobriety journey?
So we were it's funny how things can shift. So we're just having, these conversations. As soon as you said Devin's name, like right away, like my eyes, welled up,
Yeah.
right? And I think naturally, I want to try to maybe hide that emotion. I would say, I don't know if you call that ego or call that what, fear of being vulnerable, but it's fucking tough, man. It's tough. It's by far the hardest, I would say, loss I've experienced in my life. Devin was my go-to guy, my mentor, good friend. I know Devin impacted so many lives, even people that he didn't even met, his family sleeping at night because of what fucking Devin did, and
Exactly. Right there. Right.
And somebody like that, I've had a lot of losses. I've cut people out of my life. When I heard the news about Devin, I was wrong. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do now? What am I gonna do now? And so, like, to answer your question, it's been really tough. It's just been, man, that was a big one. I didn't see that one coming. I felt like I lost, like, part of me just like fucking like died, right? And Devin was the guy, because I had to have some dark days since I've been sober, and Devin was always the guy to believe in me, and he always knew what to say at the right time, and he always made me feel, heard, and he was really the first man.
It's like a superpower of his, right?
He was just so good. He just, that was his gift. Devin had this gift, and he had this unique ability to build people up at the same time. Like, Devin would tell you, Devin wouldn't, if you were, I would just say, like, for me, if I was kind of going down, he saw me going down like a dark path and making some horrible decisions because I clean and sober, because fucking definitely that, has happened. He would be the one to tell me, like, you're going to stay sober, but you won't stay sober if you continue to fucking do this, and he would still give me, tell me what to do. He always told me what to do, and it worked. Everything that Devin fucking told me worked, and I'm not, without Devin, I'm not here today, so, I fucking love Devin, and a lot of people love Devin, and, and I go back to, I've been doing like a bit of, even prior to Devin, like learning about the different stages of grief and more about that process, right? And a lot of times I find myself getting angry. I find myself, I've drifted into guilt sometimes about maybe if I would have said this or might have said that. And it's just like, this isn't, and I want to blame people sometimes too, if I'm being honest. It's like, fuck you, man. Like, where were you, you know what I mean? Or blame addiction or blame mental health. And it's like, the reality is that none of that stuff is going to serve me. The reality is that we lost somebody. We lost an amazing fucking human, and Devin, you can't duplicate Devin. You just can't, and
no, you can't.
So I hope that I know that his kind of legacy will live on forever, and what he did when he was here, like, that rippled through the whole community, and again, when he passed, that rippled through the whole community, and Devin was always about, helping others, and
this show may or may not exist today, right? He came on as a sponsor in the very early days, long before there was any win to him, any gain for him. He came on as a sponsor, and I could argue that we might not even exist. It's most certainly not in the state we're in, because he introduced Lisa and I. Right? He's just like, so I am, and so Chuck, so it's funny because, like, we throw the word gratitude around. Well, I throw that word around quite a bit, right? So it's just like, where, for me, it's easy to say I'm grateful. It's either gratitude's under the stone, right down to gratitude list when things are going great, right? It's whenever the rug gets pulled out from under us, which that fucking just happened. Where's my gratitude now? So that's the time they're most important and yet the hardest to do, right?
Totally. I'm trying to, like, I don't know if he's making sense of all of it, but I'm grateful that I was able to have that relationship with Devin while he was here, and I always have that relationship with him. I talk to him, it's like, what would Devin be saying right now? I'm like, Jason, you fucking idiot, don't do that.
And he would say it just like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure he would. Yeah, he was, Devin's a little rough around the edges sometimes, right? But his heart his heart was in the right place. He generally just wanted to fucking, see people get well, right? And
Yeah, big time, big time.
Yeah.
Right? So when you lose somebody that close to you, especially somebody that's a big part of your recovery community, specifically to that, and maybe really, it's one thing. The loss of my father drove me to recovery. Not, it didn't make me want to burn my life down. Not like a lot of resentments or other negative feelings do, anyway. But when it's somebody in your recovery community, and not just in your community, but one of your support people, like one of your big support people.
Yeah.
How does a person stay sober through that? You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, so to be honest with you, Chuck, and like I was saying, even, when Devin was still here, like there were some pretty dark times for me, in sobriety. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this, that's what my head would be telling me, all this like doubt, and Kevin was always good with reeling me back and saying, like, Jason, provided you continue to do the same things, like, you will stay sober, you will get through this. So then all of a sudden we lose Devin, and that was different, and that was like, those are times when I didn't know, and I still were, it's pretty recent where I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to navigate this, because when my go-to person is taken away, he's no longer here. I felt lost. I feel lost sometimes. I still do. But so Chuck, to answer your question, this is when, because I could easily like just like give up right now and just say fuck it, Matt, and everybody would be, oh yeah, well it's almost like, I don't want to say like an excuse, but at the same time is like, I have a choice right now. And if anything right now, I really need to dig in and be diligent and careful, and because like naturally what I want to do is push people away, because I'm like, oh man, this is just like, and reinstills what your head always, tells you what you believe, is that you're just going to be alone, people are going to die. You're going to, all that abandonment stuff and blah, 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 whatever, not blah, blah, blah. It's real stuff, but I don't want that to be me. So I almost use fear. And I'll be honest with you, I've been scared sometimes about, relapse, but I'll use that as like a catalyst zone, like a motivator to, man, do what the fuck you need to do to stay sober, and you will stay sober.
Right. And I think that comes time and repetition and, all of those things. But
and what a dishonor that would be to Devin. That'd be the biggest dishonor.
Well said, right there. Right, well said. That's it, right there. Right. And for me, it's my dad is why I don't. Right, because you never got to see this version of me. And, well, I'm going to live the rest of my life in such a way, right? But and that's a tough one, right?
It's funny, Chuck, because like right when that happened, my phone for probably a week and definitely the first few days got lit up with a lot of messages, a lot of phone calls, and it was the whole thing was really overwhelming for me. What happened? I'm still in shock and disbelief and in denial, trying to say, no, like this can't be, negotiated, and wanting him, like he needs to, I still find myself saying that he needs to be here right now. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Let's move into the next thing. Can I get you to move towards center of the frame? Just go to your right a little bit. Thank you. Yes. I keep meaning to ask you that, but I haven't wanted to stop the conversation, but now that I'm going to cut this out anyway. So 8 minutes. Just got to make a note of that. So, okay. What do you want to talk about next, buddy? You had some things, like I've got things off the top of my head always, but you had some things written down or whatever that you wanted to discuss. So I want to make sure that we.
Just let me take a look. I got it in my notes here, actually. Let's see. Okay. So what did I have? Meet people where they're at. That's the whole harm reduction thing, right? That's we can get into that. Yeah. That's completely taken out of context, I think. And where I wanted to go with that is, we meet people where they're at, but we don't leave them there, which I think that we're doing a good job of. Substance use disorder. You guys have talked about this a lot. We don't need to get into that. Like the Mental Health Act, I don't think we need to talk about that.
No, we talk a lot about that. So not that we can talk too much about it, but
grief is in here. I feel like you guys have already talked. Safe supply note. I don't know, man. I feel like this one would be like a whole nother one. Again, what you and I talked about, how it's easier to get drugs than proper help. We also, Chuck, you want to know what was interesting? Was you talked about it too. If we're giving out harm reduction and pipes and rigs and all this stuff and naloxone kits, which is great. Yes, they save lives. We
Yep.
need to, I feel, at least be talking 50-50 about both, not 98-2.
Absolutely.
And that, you know,
Right.
so.
Yeah. I'm just, give me a quick second here. I'm just going to look at where we're at. I can't remember what the first cut was for time. So 33. Okay. So we're doing okay. 8 minutes. Okay, cool. Let's jump into harm reduction. Yeah, because when we had talked about that it should be a law, right? That we have to, if you're going to pass out anything harm reduction, it should have something recovery based on it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So next up, Jason, what I do want to talk about is harm reduction. Of course, in your part of the world, it's kind of the case study for harm reduction, and in some people's minds, where it goes too far, right? You know, not that it goes too far for the people that need it, but that it's used as a blanket solution. Maybe that's a better way to put that, right? Because for some people, the extreme end of harm reduction is exactly the thing they need, right? For other people, it's not. And to segue from Devin is the one that really opened my eyes to something about harm reduction by saying that we use it to form policy. We base policy on a very small percentage of people who are in active addiction, right? That's the people in East Hastings and in 10 cities all across North America now. Right? We're basing our policies on them when in reality, the vast majority of people that are in active addiction aren't in that situation.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of those people, it could be argued, end up in that situation because all the energy goes to harm reduction instead of treatment.
Yeah.
Right. You know, right. So, and of course, your work is in harm reduction. You know,
it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So how is that for you? Because I know personally what some of your views are, and we can kind of, I'll get you to say that in a very generalized, you know, kind of condensed way, what your views on harm reduction and abstinence are. But I want you to end that with, how does that affect your work? So go.
Yeah. So I know this was going to come up, you know, harm reduction, abstinence stuff, right? And again, like we talked about before, like they're not opposing. They need to work together. I feel like they work together well. I feel like, you know, harm reduction has a place in abstinence recovery. But like that word harm reduction, I feel like it's taken out of context sometimes, you know, and I like what you just said too, Chuck. I feel like in BC, we've leaned heavily onto this one thing that clearly isn't working on its own. It doesn't, you know, and so that's it. It has its place, but I think that if we're going to be talking about harm reduction and keeping, you know, and this is like another thing too, right? And again, this term gets taken out of context. We meet people where they're at. Like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? Okay, where they're at right now, they're in their grips of addiction. They're overdosing. They're at risk. They have you know, wounds that need to be treated. All the things associated with it, right? Super vulnerable, like committing crimes. So does that mean that we leave them there? And I feel like that's what we're doing, you know. And it's just like, if I'm gonna hand out supplies to some, you know, clean needles, you know, meth pipes, all the things, then I feel like we need to also be talking about abstinence, and it needs to be in the conversation, you know. And again, it goes into like this whole thing where, oh, well, they need to choose that. Well, we don't need to, I think, get into that, but they're no longer choosing it. It's like if somebody has a psychotic disorder, if they haven't taken their medication, if they're unwell, we don't tell them they need to choose to be in a hospital. They get put in the hospital. And I don't
100%.
I don't, and it's just like, why when people are dying at pretty rapid numbers and they're out there like suffering, we treat this unique illness. And I think that's what you guys have talked about before, and it's like beyond me. But again, it's like, where would we put them anyway, right? And I don't think that everybody who uses substances needs to be in a hospital, you know, and just kind of quote like what Devin talked about too. But there is some certain, and again, I said this, I've openly said this, and I said it to an audience that maybe not necessarily carried the same beliefs around the stuff that I do, but I have nephews, and if they're in the grips of addiction, and even myself, being a person with a opiate use, disorders, addicted to heroin and fentanyl, when I overdose, for example, I would want somebody to step in and make that decision for me, And then,
why are you being let out of the hospital when you just died, right? Like, why is that happening, right?
Well, I left. I left is the thing, right? But if somebody would have stepped in and be like, this guy is unwell, right? We're going to keep him here, and maybe it's a tricky one too, because like as we all know, well, a lot of us know that those windows of opportunity when people have those moments of clarity are they're so small, and whenever they need help, they need it now. They don't have 3 months to go on a wait list and jump through all these hoops, and so I just need to I think we need to really wake up and look at what we're doing and just be honest about what we're doing isn't working. You want to know what's going to work? I think it is working. Is what Alberta's doing.
It's a touchy subject, but right? And it even then though we don't have the numbers to back that up yet because it's so new. No, right, and that is the argument against it. Is there's no studies, but we have never done holistic mandated treatment. It's never been done anywhere in the world.
No,
right.
What happens here, Chuck, in BC, right? So we have, we talked about too, every person is unique in a sense when it comes to their own relationship with substances and mental health, that they need the right type of help, So what I need, you might not necessarily need. So it's very broad in that. But what happens is, unfortunately, that we have, as far as I know, one treatment center that will treat people with concurrent disorders, right? With significant with psychotic disorders, substance use disorders. That criteria to get in there, it's not easy to get in. We'll just say that. What happens is they end up in some shitty recovery house in Surrey because there is those, and the help that they need they don't get. So now you're having, and again, they don't put enough. There's not enough money put into treatment and recovery, And
but there's plenty put into the penal system. There's plenty put into harm reduction, things like safe supply, but nobody's putting money into treatment, right?
No,
and that's where I think Alberta is doing something. There's a much bigger conversation to be had around that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this whole thing about mandated treatment because there's so much more we can talk about, Jason, and I'm the one that did that, so whatever. But something you and I discussed offline. If we are going to hand out clean paraphernalia and Narcan kits, and I'm not for a second saying that we shouldn't do those things, right? I mean, clean needles essentially stop the spread of AIDS.
Yeah.
Right? Like that happened. So we can't go backwards on that. We can't.
No.
Right? But every single time we pass somebody a piece of paraphernalia, we should be passing them information about treatment.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's a phone number, whether it's whatever, right? There should be something attached to that.
Yeah. And Chuck, when you talk about that, how does that affect your work? I honestly, and not even at work, I feel, this is just my opinion, I feel like it's unethical and we're doing people a disservice if we know that this one thing over here works and it works very well based on the statistics, and we're not going to talk about it, especially if that one thing can help save their life and get them out of the suffering that they're in. And we're not having a conversation about that. Why? Because we're scared to talk about it, or we just want to believe what all these other people believe in over here. We need to have, we have a voice here. It needs to be talked about more. And I don't believe in pushing people into treatment, but in some obviously circumstances, I do. And
it's a tool in the toolbox, right? If we look at it that way, right? It's not going to be everything, right? But it's certainly something. So
And Chuck, when we change the language, right? So that term, those two words, forced treatment, that sounds super harsh, right? Because people get really you're taking away the rights and blah blah blah. If we turn that into how about an opportunity to have a life? I think it probably lands a little bit different.
Yeah, of course it does.
That's what it is.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
There's somebody a real opportunity at it, a holistic treatment environment. And where's the money come from? I don't know, but I know that. And Lisa talked about this. There's studies that have been done, and they've been repeated around the world. It's not some one-off in Portugal, right? Or in I think Denmark. No, not Denmark. Yeah, Denmark is the other place that somewhere up there anyway in Europe. These studies have been repeated all over the world. For every dollar you put into treatment, 6 to 10 come back to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So even if it's about the money, right? Because the penal system is just so weighed down by it, right? The police, healthcare system. These things are all being weighed down heavily by addiction, right? So if we switch gears and we start putting money into treating the addiction as opposed to penalizing people for being addicts, right? The money comes back. The savings are massive, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the challenge with that, though, is 4-year election cycles, and nobody wants to put in a long-term investment because it's going to take a while to see that come back to community. And the optics of it, we're going easy on crime, and nobody wants to hear that shit, right? So but have you been up to date on what's happening with decrim out in Toronto? Are you aware of that conversation? Okay, so as you know, I'm sure you know, Vancouver is a pilot project for decriminalizing personal amounts of narcotics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They've since redacted, or they've since gone back on some of that, right? And taken away the public use portion of it.
Yeah,
right?
good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And good for that, right? You can't have people in restaurants and hospitals smoking fentanyl. You can't. You just can't.
Agree.
Right? There is no human rights case that makes that okay. I'm sorry, but no, right?
No.
However, in Toronto, they just got years of work. So one of our sponsors, Far Canada, who's Families for Addiction Recovery, Angie, who's the executive director there, spent years putting this together and trying to get it into happening, a pilot program, much like Vancouver's, into Toronto, with some different controls. And it's been shot back completely. And her argument for it, the whole thing just made perfect sense when she said it to me, because I until recently, Jason, I've been on the fence about it. Yeah. Mainly because of Vancouver, at the end of the day, because of the things that have happened in your part of the world, right? As a result of some of those policies.
Right.
But she said, for everything that happens while in active addiction, that's a major behavioral issue. They're crimes. People steal, there's a law against that. People hit people, there's a law against that. People there are laws for criminal behavior, right? So we already have those. We don't need to criminalize doing drugs. We need to criminalize dealing drugs, stealing because people are on drugs, all those things. We already have criminal, you know what I mean? So let's get rid of the decrim for that and turn it into a mental health issue.
Right.
Because if it's a disease, let's treat it like a disease.
Yeah.
Like, let's do that. Totally. Right.
Yeah.
And it just, that argument to me, man, was just like, it was profound. When she said that, I was just like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like it really does,
Yeah.
But this ramp is like letting people go rap, and what's happened in Vancouver is sad, is what it is, right? Police not being able to do anything about public use, and that's unfortunate. I don't know. Where do you land on all of that?
I don't. It's tricky because I don't want, obviously, somebody using substances behind closed doors, overdosing and dying, and that's the thing. I mean, that's probably going to continue anyway. But I do not. I think I feel like using has been normalized, and then we have always conversations about stigma and stuff like that, and definitely it's a thing. But I don't think that it's openly okay to use substances wherever we want. There's a complete disregard for public safety. I don't want to be exposed to it. I don't want people to be exposed to it. I think there's also when you talk about the behaviors, there's this sense of entitlement I feel with going and putting tents in front of businesses and all that shit, right? Like, I just think that we, unfortunately, in BC, we have this model called, housing first, thinking that that's going to be, the solution. Let's just hide the problem, right? Let's take all these people off the streets and put them in SROs and supportive housing. But how about we put more focus into the why they're there? And that model, that housing first model, doesn't work. I've seen it. I personally work inside some of those buildings and seen what happens in there, right? The people aren't getting the proper support that they need, and this even goes into if you want to, what are the two the necessities that people need to shelter, food, right? You provide those things, the chance of them getting to that point where they're going to get help or have just I know with me, the only time I entertained the idea of getting clean is because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and that's just my experience, right? So or if there was some sort of consequence or something like that, whether it was handcuffs, hospital, whatever it might be, where I was able to have a moment of clarity, and I feel like the longer we keep people in it, the less opportunity there is going to be for them to to have those realizations that, hey, like maybe I want to get out of it. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
it's a big subject. It's a tough one, right? So yeah. I don't want to get you in trouble by talking too much about that. So
yeah, me neither. I
can appreciate that for sure. But we are getting up on top of the hour here, brother. So what else you got? If there's something else you want to cover before we end the episode, most certainly we can. If not, we'll move into gratitudes. But if there's something else on your minds, if you have a burning desire, if we could use that language that you want to talk about, let's do that. And then,
no, I don't think so.
No. Okay. Well, the one way to jump into daily gratitudes, brother. Yeah. What you got?
Oh, it's funny because I was talking about that. I don't. For me to find, I'm grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know we talked about a lot some of the problems with it, but I mean, if we talked about the fundamentals of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I wouldn't be here without them. I'm grateful for Devin. I'm grateful for the opportunity to change and learn and grow. I'm grateful for the people in my life that tell me the truth despite my feelings. I'm grateful for the people that listen without judgment. And I'm grateful to be on here, and even though that things aren't necessarily great in my life right now, I think it's important to have these conversations and kind of carry like this message, and basically I feel, if anything, the message is, for me today, it's like it's okay not to be, okay, right? And
it is. Appreciate that, man. For myself, I'm going to say Devin. I'm grateful to Devin for maybe selfish reasons. He's inspired so many conversations on this show. And lately as well, of course, as I've gone back and listened to those episodes, those incredible episodes from the early days that we had with him. He's inspired so many great conversations, and that I hope continues for forever, right? So I'm grateful to his memory for that. And I'll leave it at that one. And of course, I'm also grateful to every single person who continues to like, watch, comment, share, do all of those things. Every time you do these things, it really does help us get a little bit closer to living my best life. My best life is to make a humble living, spreading the message. The message is this: if you're in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start a lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call them to detox, go to a meeting, pray, go to church. I don't care. Do whatever it is you got to do to get that journey started. It is so much better than the alternative. If you have a loved one who's suffering an addiction right now, just taking the time to listen to our conversation. If you just take one more minute out of your day and text that person, let them know they are loved. Use the words,
"You are loved."
That little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back. Boom. Perfect, brother. Perfect. Yeah. Oh, did I hit stop? No, now I hit stopped. There we go.